This is such a difficult topic to compress, but I shall attempt to compress it in 30 minutes and share with you my perspectives. Anyone who comes to you and professes to be an expert in the media, especially the online media, should not be trusted. Because there is no such thing as an expert. We all make mistakes, we all misjudge, and sometimes quite seriously. Right? It's something that's morphing, evolving even as we speak. It's difficult to make sense of it, but we need to understand its sensibility. That's what online media, in particular social media, is about. The topic for today that I've selected is the online media. Is it a bane or a boon? Obviously, the answer is both, depending on which way you choose to use it. Many of us are trapped in a hierarchically conditioned environment where we listen to people with the credentials, but we are not listening to what people are saying, but we're listening first based on the credentials of the individuals. That has to change. And social media, in particular, and online media, actually is a catalyst for changing that conditioning. Now, what are the characteristics of online media? Let me just highlight a few. Globally, it's a global phenomenon, right? Number one, it is not stringent on verification, right? So online, the online citizen, the independent, and so on, there are many today. They are not subjected to the same level of stringency of editorial accountability as your mainstream media. The mainstream media has to be very, very careful and stringent about it because they are a legal entity and they are open to libel suits, as we are aware, right? Besides, all mainstream media in Singapore are subject to their licenses being renewable every year. Every year. So, one advantage that social media or online media has is that it is not subjected to the stringency of verified information. Right. Second, it is voice populi, the voice of the populace, the people. Right? It is beginning to demonstrate to us the range of viewpoints that can exist on any situation. It is opening up our minds because the online media is not just about Facebook. The online media is about people actually selecting things that make sense to them and sending it to our network, right, of friends. And that's persuading them to see your point of view through an article that you have selected. Thirdly, there is relative anonymity, right? I say relative because increasingly more established online sites are requiring people to sign in and register. But the truth is you can register with any name. So it may not even be revealing your real identity. You're supposed to register with an email address and some name. But I think it's beginning to shift a lot more towards accountability online. Next, the issue of it's borderless, right? Do you realize that it's borderless? When the nickel highway collapse took place in Singapore several years back, I was in Sydney. My friend, my contact in LTA sent me an SMS. WhatsApp wasn't around then. He sent me an SMS to say there was a collapse in Nickel Highway. Nickel Highway as a road collapsed. I was shocked. I SMS'd my colleagues in my office, which was in Robinson Road, which is 1.5 kilometers away from the site. They weren't aware. This is the reality we're facing. So today, even if our mainstream media in Singapore chooses not to publish something that is controversial in this country, there's nothing stopping us, anyone, from leaking that information to the New York Times, if it is something of interest to them, or to Reuters, that becomes global news. It'll be very embarrassing for the Singapore government and for the Singapore mainstream media if a Singapore issue is broken as news somewhere else. But this can happen. it is more than anything else going to be, I suspect, an increasingly powerful catalyst for activism. No matter how many restrictions there might be, there's always a way to get around it. And the people who are active on the internet know these ways. Remember, the Singapore government tried to restrict the certain sites that you can't go to, right? Proxy servers. But it didn't work. And I can tell you, whatever measures you come up with, it's not going to work, because there's always a way around it. So you are seeing the power of social media, the way I've described it, actually playing out in different scenarios around the world. I'd like to end by highlighting something. You know, this is the left, this is the center, and this is right. When Singapore started, right, 50s, 60s, where was the popular sensibility? 50s and 60s. Where do you think it was? The popular sensibility, right, was here, right? Because those were the days of the union movement, right? The left was very much here. Even when the PAP was formed, right, in 1954, they were more socialist. They were. So this was where the popular sentiment was, left. And then, over time, where did he go? Did he remain left? No. When the PAP continued to deliver, right, society became a lot more utilitarian, less idealistic, more utilitarian, responding to utilitarian sort of policies, because we are pretty low in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Yeah, right? So we were steadily moving to the right, and we were very much to the right. This was when? 80s, right up to late 70s, 80s, 90s. And then we started shifting, right? Where are we now? We have shifted back, and now we are here. I know I may be guilty of oversimplifying, but it is generally the trend. So we start here in the 50s and 60s, and we generally moved here, and we moved here because the government delivered, right? So you want status quo. Makes sense. But in the 2000s, things became a lot more complex, and we also moved up higher, much higher in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It wasn't enough for the government to say, we give you lights, we clean your longkangs, the drains, and so on. It's not enough anymore, right? We want our stomachs are fed. We want to talk a little bit more about freedom, democracy, and so on. Not excessively, but a lot more. That's why it's center, not left anymore. Center. Now, if you look at the media, right? Mainstream media. Where is it? Mainstream media, right up to very recently, was here, right? Social media, where was it? Right? I mean left. Social media. That's where it was. But if the sensibility is here, right? This group is actually pissed off, because they are not really relating to me, because they are uncutting, right? As in carrying the government. I can't relate to these guys. I'm talking about majority, yeah? I can't relate to these guys, because whatever these guys are saying, as a matter of principle, they have to whack. Even if these guys are making sense, no, we have to whack. And just whacking for the sake of whacking, no reason. So, so these guys were feeling like, so what? People were getting disconnected, right? I know for a long time I stopped reading the Straits Times. But I still have to subscribe to it. So it's there as a stack. Sorry, Business Times said. Okay. Straits Times. A lot of people have stopped subscribing. Go online. I couldn't relate to these guys. Because each time I go in there, I hear Hokkien bad words, all kinds of things. Everybody is bad. Nonsensical rubbish, Really nonsense, And I couldn't relate to that. And slowly what happened? This is not tenable, right? Because people will say, I'm not interested in this. I'll just do my work, go home and do my stuff. People become disengaged. And that was happening right up to 2011. That was happening. And I would say 2011 is a watershed election in many senses of the word. The mainstream media realized that they can't remain there, right? Cannot. So they have actually come here. This is center right. Got it? The social media is also beginning to move here. Center left. Because any social media group or sites that remain here are going to lose ground. They're going to lose ground. They better get their act together, be more credible, verify the information, come up with good comment pieces that make sense and resonate with them. No more firing from the hip. And there is a revolving door. You know what it means? Which means every now and then they can switch. And that's where we are today. You see what I'm saying, guys? That's where we are. You can find every now and then the social media guys switching to center right. Bertha Hanson's middle ground. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that. Bertha Hanson is a well-known journalist, ex-journalist, right? Mainstream media journalist. Every now and then, she usually is very critical of the government, but every now and then, she supports government policies. Quite vehemently. And she's here. Initially, when she was there, people said, oh, maybe she has been bought. No, she's still herself. But every now and then, mainstream media surprise us by crossing over. Then we say this one is Bayang. No. But this is going to happen more and more. You know what I'm saying? It's going to more and more. And what it means, essentially what it means is this. Pro-Singapore. That's what it is. We are going to talk, there's going to be a lot more conversations in this spectrum about what is in the best interest of Singapore and Singaporeans. It's going to end up being a lot more reflective of what we are and our aspirations, and you're going to have a more engaged society and a more mature society. So I'd like to conclude by saying this. It is important for the government to acknowledge that this has happened. It is important for the government to acknowledge that this has happened. That people are beginning to be engaged. People can be trusted a lot more to make decisions. They're not just going to be swayed by charlatans. They are a lot more sensible than we give Singaporeans credit for. And once the government starts validating that trust, you will see that as an incentive for greater maturity among Singaporeans and us as a country. And social media, online media, will become more of a boon than a bane. I leave you with that thought. Thank you.